Any questions about the health consequences of bicycling as it pertained to women should have been put to rest by the exploits of Denver's petite but Herculean mistress of the road, Dora Ellen Thornworth Rinehart, the wife of A.E. Rinehart, a prominent Denver photographer. Dora Rinehart took up cycling in the fall of 1895 as part of her efforts to recover from a bout of scarlet fever. Her doctor warned her against it, but she persisted. And by the following summer, she was riding centuries, 100-mile bike tours, sometimes on a daily basis. At one point, she rode 20 consecutive centuries in 20 days. It's worth remembering, too, that when Mrs. Rinehart rode her 10 and 20 consecutive centuries, she was riding it on a very heavy bicycle, primarily over dirt roads. Mrs. Rinehart's bicycling exploits, I think, underscore how bicycles were part of the larger process of women freeing themselves from male control in our society. It affected their wardrobe. Mrs. Rinehart would ride her bike wearing a split skirt, in other words, pants. And she would do so in the company of young men who were not relatives. There's a photograph of Mrs. Rinehart riding her bicycle into Laramie, Wyoming after a 2-day trip from Denver in the company of 2 young men, neither of whom is her husband or her brother. Quite clearly, Mrs. Rinehart did not feel that there were any negative moral implications to her setting out on a 2 or 3-day bicycle trip in the company of 2 young men. Now, others may have thought otherwise, but she seems to be emblematic of a changing attitude towards and about women and their independence in American society. And in her mind, at least, there were no moral implications to this.
This is a 1896 ladies Douglas brand bike. Mrs. Rinehart rode the 17,200 miles in 1896. She was riding a Stearns brand bike. It's basically the same equipment but a different maker. So this is equivalent in weight and maneuverability to the bike that she rode. The stopping is really done with the pedals. This bike has no brakes. Basically, the braking was done by just back pressuring the roll of the pedal. But this is a chain drive. There is no gear shifting. When the pedals move, the wheel moves, and conversely, when the wheels move, the pedals move. This bike's equipped with a bell. The bell rolls on the front wheel. When the chain is pulled by the operator, it puts the bell down onto the wheel, and it's a continuous action ringing bell. The bike has a basket, and it just slips right off so a lady could have her shopping in the basket, put it on the bike, and ride home. The grips are cork. The leather saddle has a split center, a lot like modern saddles the last 5 to 10 years. The rims are wood. Wood's a very light and strong material. You can see the lacing from the fender down to just above the hub and the lacing across the chain guard. That lacing is to keep the ladies' skirts and petticoats from getting caught in the spokes or getting caught in the chain. This bike is finished with a black lacquer and decals. The decals have hand-painted gold surrounds with starbursts. The bike's also finished in a nickel plate on the shiny parts. The bike's cost is the end of the high-priced bike period, $150. 10 years later, bikes were down to $4 to $7, but at this point they were still half a year's pay for a workman. So it was a prized possession, and the quality of the finish mattered to people. It was an issue of style, and so you had to have it look nice.